well, what we've got here, we've got CLIL, EFL, ESOL. Where should we put EAL? There, it fits. Lowest scoring, of course, only 3 points. On another board, in another context, you might be able to get more score. But if we have FSM, you get a lot of points, of course. Okay, right. A few years ago, I was asked to update some colleagues from the modern languages field about EAL because we're interested in finding out about the commonalities, any commonalities or differences between the two language teaching fields. The common interest here, of course, is the language development of EAL learners, for whom English language development is but one dimension of their bilingual development. The other dimension being development of their first language. With all the changes on the EAL landscape, it's time we thought it's time we revisited this topic. So let's have a look here. Right. The world of English language teaching is full of acronyms. This is from a TEFL website. This website goes on to give some definitions, especially between EFL and ESL, and then gave the conclusion that actually most people don't know the difference, are not aware of what the difference is. Here's another new one, acronym, English as an alternative language. This was on the TES yesterday, it came out as an advert. So here we have. So we're looking for enthusiastic learning support assistance to support students with EAL and language difficulties. And you don't need any experience, but you do need passion. Remember that. Okay. All right, so since I last discussed this with my modern foreign language colleagues, the government policy on EAL has changed, and the agenda for closing the achievement gap is now focused on addressing poverty as a single issue affecting achievement across all groups in our schools. As a consequence, there has been a loss of focus on EAL by the government and the cessation of any guidance to schools in this area. Indeed, the last policy statement on EAL was about 2 years ago, in which the government says schools are free to develop local solutions to local issues. So, no guidance to schools on how to meet the needs of EAL learners. Having said that, there are 3 documents on the DFE website on EAL. The top one on the webpage is a report on developing quality tuition, effective practice in schools, English as an additional language. Findings are, here's a list of findings of what's effective tuition for EAL learners. First one being, communication with parents, being able to speak the language of your target pupils, home visits, etc. I think only 2 of those points are about teaching and learning. So, as advice, guidance, do any of these help the mainstream classroom teachers to better meet the needs of the EAL learners in the classroom? I see somebody shaking their head. In such a muddled scenario, under such so-called guidance, schools looking for support for EAL learners may well feel that the tuition approach is the way forward. Now, what kind of tutor would qualify for such a role? Would it be an ESOL teacher, an EFL teacher, an EAL teacher, or someone who can speak the language of the targeted pupils? Or maybe, as that advert we just saw, someone who can support English as an alternative language? What's the difference? Does it matter? So I'll start by looking at what the language learning experience of the EAL learner might be in the school currently. And through the learning experience, I'll draw out any commonalities or differences there might be in the various approaches to supporting the EAL learner in school. I'll then focus on two fields that are both concerned with integrating content learning and language learning. Are they the same in all but name? If not, what's different? I'll then conclude with findings from 2 recent studies on EAL practice in schools and say why there is an urgent need to disseminate more widely the distinctiveness of EAL and the pedagogy that entails. So we have here the learner in the school. I'm going to go clockwise, starting from the bottom left here. So, an EAL learner in school could be receiving some in-class support. The support then could be provided by an EAL teacher who might or might not be trained in EAL. I mean, not in the not so distant past, we used to have what we call bilingual support teachers. These teachers were called bilingual support teachers because they were supporting bilingual pupils, not because they were bilingual themselves. Yeah? So we have EAL teachers now who are working with EAL teachers but who may not be trained in EAL pedagogy. Okay? So, or the support could be provided by an SEN teacher or an SEN teaching assistant using strategies they use for learners with special educational needs. In school, the learner could also be withdrawn from some mainstream lessons to have extra English language lessons. These lessons could be taught by an EAL qualified teacher, or an EFL qualified teacher, or an ESOL qualified teacher. Or they could be taken out to have some intervention program with a TA who is trained in that particular intervention program. What might the language learning experience be in the withdrawal lesson then? Well, with the EL teacher, it might be pre-learning or reviewing of key language needed back in the mainstream subject lesson. So here, there's linking the language they're learning with language needed for learning the curriculum. So we're sort of integrating content and language learning here. With the EFL teacher, the focus is likely to be on practicing grammar points or on practicing conversation in English, as those are the traditional approaches in an EFL classroom. With the ESOL teacher, the focus could be on practicing basic skills, reading, writing, and following the ESOL curriculum, which, though provides progression route for learning English as an additional language, does not actually link in with mainstream curriculum and what the learner needs for accessing subject content learning. And ESOL, I don't know if you're aware, ESOL is usually a term we use for older learners. Yeah. And I say there is an ESOL curriculum. I'm not in any way trying to denigrate the EFL ESOL teachers because a lot of us actually come from those backgrounds before we became EAL teachers. But what I'm trying to do is to draw out the approaches that these different fields represent. So moving around to the modern foreign language lesson then. Our learner may very well participate in modern foreign language lessons. However, some schools will see this as an opportunity to withdraw them for more extra English lessons, believing that it would be better for them to concentrate on just learning English. But in the MFL lesson then, the EL learner should be able to participate in the communicative approach that is supposed to be the bedrock of MFL lessons. However, as Ofsted found, MFL lessons are not always as communicative as they should be, and many teachers focus too much on textbook-oriented exercises. So although as language teachers, all these EFL, ESOL, MFL teachers, there are many commonalities, as we see here. The question mark about knowledge of curriculum, question mark for EAL, is because there is no EAL curriculum as such. You have to take the national subject curriculum as a starting point and build the language around that. I mean, unlike other countries where they have actually articulated the EAL curriculum more coherently. So these are the, maybe you could say commonalities, but there are differences. Okay. And with the last bit, it's always been our tradition in EAL and ESOL that we have this advocacy role, very much so, I would say, than maybe for EFL and ESOL, EFL and MFL. Right, so going back to the learner in the school then. In the mainstream English subject, English National Curriculum subject lesson, the EAL learner may find this the most challenging of all lessons because the teacher of English as mother tongue may treat first and second language acquisition the same and adopt the same strategies that they use with mother tongue speakers of English for EAL learners. So they could, there are a lot of general good practice strategies that they use. For example, using sentence starters, but they don't provide the support for the middle and the end, yeah, that the EAL learners need. Or doing mind mapping and assuming that learners can then formulate sentences to express the ideas in the mind map. Or brainstorming without providing additional contextual support. These strategies are not very helpful for the EAL learner. Lastly, the language learner across the curriculum in subject lessons. Without additional support, they will find it a challenge unless the subject teacher adopts strategies that support both content learning and language learning. In England, this is EAL pedagogy. In other countries and in Europe, where English is often the first foreign language taught in schools, there are developments to use the target language English, that is, to deliver some curriculum subjects. The aim being to achieve both subject content learning and language learning. And this is called CLIL, okay, content and language integrated learning. Okay. Both are concerned with learning English as an additional language, as well as content learning. So we have CLIL, teaching English as a second language. So we have CLIL as an approach for teaching English as a second language, yeah, in other countries, but we call EAL here in this country. So I'd like to spend a bit of time now comparing CLIL and EAL.